I want to get into and segue into what I'm going to call my big idea for this particular relentless learning. So that big idea is, I've talked about before, and I just want to kind of put this into some kind of perspective for folks. I believe that metaphors, and I don't know if it's the word metaphors. I was an English major. I should know whether it's metaphors or something. Similes, analogies, these things are really important in our lives as human beings, especially when we're learning new things, because these are our bridge where we can start to see the world differently. Because what similes, analogies, metaphors, these things do for us is they take something that we know and we map it to something that we don't know. Or they take something that we can see and it maps it to something else that we cannot see. And it helps provide that bridge. So I'm really big on metaphors. In fact, I've mentioned a few times in this show that if I come out with my next book, it's probably going to be on agile metaphors. So I hope somebody doesn't steal it out from under me. But I think it's very, very powerful to use metaphors. And one of the more powerful metaphors I've used in my training is talking about backlog management. I think backlog management is really important. This is Apke's golden rule of agile. This is about sequencing the work so that we can deliver the most value in the shortest amount of time, about relative estimation versus absolute estimation, how we can leverage those things. But when you look at your backlog as a whole, when I'm working with product owners, one of the things I tell them, and they seem to really, really get it after I use this metaphor, is imagine that you own a small bodega. And for those of you who might not be city dwellers, it's a corner store or market. So, if you've watched Seinfeld, you probably know bodega. You got a small little market on the corner in a corner in San Francisco, which is just up the road from me. And I want you to imagine that you own that. And then I want you to think about, as a small business owner, when do you make money? And the answer when I talk with people is obviously pretty simple. I make money when I sell something. I make money when my inventory is taken off the shelf, brought to the counter, paid for, and out the door. And what I want to start asking another question is then, therefore, what is the value of the inventory that sits on the shelf? And the answer to that is, in my mind, there really isn't a whole lot of value to the inventory on the shelf. And as I was going to put this together, I asked a few questions of our good friend Google, and I wanted to find out what Google has to say about the value of inventory, because it's been a long time since I've done my accounting work. And this is what they came up with. I don't know if you all can read it, but I'll read it to you. Inventory is almost always an asset for accounting purpose. But the reason that inventory is listed as an asset for inventory purposes is in the next section that it's closely correlated to demand, if it is. And so inventory usually sells quickly after being produced, and therefore it makes it an asset. Meaning to me that it's only really an asset because I am expecting to deliver it quickly. I'm expecting it to sell quickly, so I'm already classifying it from an accounting standpoint as an asset. However, inventory that is left unsold may become a liability if the cost of storage is higher, if the inventory deteriorates and becomes unsellable. Now, when we take this metaphor and we apply it to something like our backlog, let's assume software development for the sake of argument, because that's where I spent most of my life. You all are smart people. You're here. If you weren't smart people, I don't think you'd be here anyway. You're smart people. If you're not in software development, you're going to be able to take it and use it in your thing. What happens when we look at the things that are on our backlog for software development? Our product owner, the product owner owns a backlog, and they put together, here's all the things that we can do for our software, all the features we can do, all the technical debt we can fix, all the defects we can fix, etc. We put all those things together, and that backlog, really, to me, when I look at it, that's inventory. And I say, what if we just think about that like we would physical inventory? What if we thought about that backlog like the person who owns a bodega thinks about the backlog? How would we start to treat our backlog differently? And I think that becomes very, very powerful when we start thinking about it. So what is this backlog that I'm talking about? It's an inventory in the sense of it's an inventory of ideas, because in software development, most knowledge work. These are ideas. These are not physical objects, right? So this is where we have to kind of imagine the metaphor. And I think we can all do that. We can all start to see that these things have, everything in my backlog of ideas has value. If I were to deliver this backlog item or this backlog item or a different backlog item, it's going to give me some kind of variable value in getting it to my customers or putting it into production. Or even if I'm doing DevOps, creating a better pipeline so I can move more things down the highway, another metaphor. And everything that I have in inventory has a cost. In accounting, I know we call this cost of sales, but in our business, it's how much does it take and how much do I have to spend to extract that value? And software development and most knowledge work, it's the amount of effort that we have to put into it, because, you know, if you look at the main cost of software development and a lot of other knowledge work, it's the pay that we pay to our developers, the people creating the work. So if we ask ourselves those questions and look at it in inventory, then we could start to ask the questions, well, how much money do I have sitting in inventory? What is the value of moving things from one backlog to another backlog, right? The metaphor of, and this is what happens in a lot of companies where they have silos. We talk about all the time, and Agile, a lot of Agile talks about, let's create cross-functional teams. Well, if we start looking at backlog like inventory, we can watch the goods moving through the system. And I can tell you, just like in the bodega, if you're moving your product from one shelf to another, there's no value in it. You can move your inventory from one place to another in that bodega all day long, but you're not going to make money until you actually sell the item, until somebody picks it off the shelf and buys it. And it's the same with our intellectual inventory or ideas. There is not value in those ideas. Well, there is value in those ideas, but it's not realized value until it's actually put into production, until it's actually delivered. And then we can start to watch the inventory as it moves through the system and ask ourselves certain questions like we would physical inventory. How much inventory do we have in stock? Because in the bodega, the key to the bodega is they're small. They don't have a lot of room. They don't want to carry a bunch of inventory. In fact, their ideal situation would be that the stuff comes into the back door. I'm assuming it's a back door, and it's put on the shelf, and then 5 minutes later, it's gone. If they could sell everything without holding any inventory at all, that would be great. So they're going to look at their inventory and they say, you know, how long does my inventory stay on the shelf? And how long does it do it in knowledge work? Well, if I'm taking something and I'm moving it from the software development team to the testing team to another team that does, you know, something else, to a DevOps team, to a release team, to that team, all that inventory is stuck in the system. It's still sitting on a shelf somewhere. So anyway, I get real passionate about it because there's so many things that you can take this metaphor and you can start to look at it and you can start to play with it. Because the more you play with it, the more you realize, hey, there are some problems in our system, and we have a lot of value locked in our system, which is why, again, I'm going to go back to this seminar I'm going to give on, I believe it's January 18th. The link is in the comments so you can follow it and join us. It's free. I'm going to talk about this. How do we provide value to intellectual ideas? How do we provide value to an inventory of ideas? And how do we see how much value is locked into our system? There is no value to the bodega on keeping things on the shelf. There's no value in the bodega of inventorying items. That's another thing we do a lot of. When you have a lot of stuff in inventory, what do you have to do? You have to status it. Status reports, everybody knows who knows liens, that's muda, that's waste. There's no value added to statusing. It's like the bodega owner going out and doing inventory. I have to do it because every once in a while I got to verify what I have in inventory, but if it's sold, I don't have to inventory it. So there's a lot of waste in all this stuff that we're doing, because basically when you go into a status meeting of a backlog or a big project meeting and you're showing where all the work is, all you're really doing is saying, which shelf is it on now?